I'll give him. So I hate this little gavel. I'm going to call together the Communication and Policy Committee meeting for July 20th. It is 5:35. Currently, the members of the committee that are present are Jim Richards and myself, Gina Cannon, and we do not have a quorum. We have another board member who is coming, and it'll constitute a quorum when he gets here, but for the moment, we're going to, I think, do some housekeeping conversation. Nothing that requires a quorum to be present to get this particular segment of work done. So Kathleen, do you want me to turn it over to you, or Karen,
we have several things to do. We'd like to share with you the work that's been done on policies, then this past year, then look at what's ahead for us. What are the priorities for you? Because you could meet every night if you wanted on policy. I know you don't, so I want to be sensitive to that. But let's kind of review where we are, and we just got, as a matter of fact, today I got another copy. I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
On the changes requiring our prompt attention.
Yes.
So I will over the next couple of weeks review these policies.
Some of which, Kathleen, we've already dealt with. Thank
Right.
you, Karen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Stand by, because guess what? Title IX is out for public review, some of the updates. I've read them, I attended one of their webinars. It's out, and they're gonna go 60 days for public comment, and then they have to take the comments in and comment on those, so those are coming down the road.
Right, but they're not going to be
Nothing
immediately. They're not going to be immediate.
So let's do that. Let's kind of give you an update and where we're at, and then we'll pause as we wait for Dave, because
Yeah.
we do want you to look at one policy this evening, 413, drug-free workplace and drug-free schools.
Right.
For tonight.
And the other thing I want to say is I believe that trying to do 8 policies last time as a chunk was a bit. Oh, that's all your fault, Karen.
Yeah,
That's it.
because I was like, well, we haven't met for a while, so I'm gonna put them in accelerated mode, and I shouldn't have forced them.
Karen, can you use the mic?
Yes,
Sorry.
my apologies, that was too many, maybe 7.5, no.
But I think that was a
Big chunk.
bit too large of a chunk to bite off all at once. That's all. So if we can avoid doing that again.
Yeah, the good news though is we had.
We're done that almost.
All of the education ones, and we had the big hub in the middle with all the spokes.
Yep.
We got through it, so, but
And
I know it was
if they all get
painful.
approved
Then we're in great
at
shape.
next month's board meeting, then we're all done that particular piece. So
That's correct.
that will be good.
Yep.
Very polite to if you'd have had your voice, I wouldn't have had to present it, and
I'm
you'd have
sorry.
you'd have done a much better job than I did in covering that in the time allotted. And so everybody, we would
Well,
have been easy.
blame COVID.
No, I said, no, you do a better job at presenting them than I do. So I apologize that I didn't, that was a tough night, but yeah, if we get through all of them, I think we're in great shape heading into this school year, which is right around the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to call your attention. I put on your list to make,
Yeah.
and really, thank you, because there's been some heavy, heavy lifts. This goes all the way back to 2021. First thing I ever did was the Title IX. And then you look at these, what we did that rest of that year and last year. And quite a few of these we created, the transgender, gender nonconforming student, pregnant students, the civility. So there was a lot done, and so we haven't been just sitting around during the committee. There's been great progress. There's always more we can do, and I will try and just, continue. If you want to say, do you want me to limit, say no more than 3, or I guess it depends on how complex
It depends,
is.
I think, how
And
much we're
urgent it
rewriting
is,
and
what our directives are.
Yep.
and how, I don't want to say how important to the community, but there are some policies, I've seen a couple, that are 5 or 6 sentences. They're not a controversial topic.
Right.
If we wanted to do 10 of those,
Yeah.
but the
Right.
bullying policy is going to be one policy over several nights.
Correct.
So It depends.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I can't say.
No, that's
But-
fine. That's fine. But again,
We'll
when
use
you
our
look at-
discretion on that, all right? And then we'll monitor it and look at what policies, like the bully policy, which was going to require a lot of review and walking through the information, so.
Yeah.
And the good news, like on bullying, though, is we are up to date. We have something that was revised within the last few years, and the revisions are not huge.
Didn't we just do it last year and we're meeting, we're
No, we
touching it
didn't.
again?
We didn't. We were going to, and we did not do it last year. This past school year, the year before, Donna Pally and I met with Janita and
Oh, okay, we did
Students.
students, the focus groups.
no, we did a policy that we rewrote, but maybe it was harassment as opposed to bullying.
Okay.
So,
But
where we had to
anyway,
update all of the timelines of when this person had to respond and that person had to respond and protecting this person from the person who was the supposed offender, and we did all that.
We did cover a policy, and I'm not sure which policy.
Yeah, I'm not sure which it is, so that's why I'm gonna look
Off the top
again,
of
but
my head.
but anyway, and as I said, these are. It's a lot.
maybe it
of
was the
work.
first round of student safety and violence prevention, round 1.
Yeah.
Pretty extensive list here, and so you all can see the work that you've done over the past year or so, and I think it's pretty impressive.
The off of this list, I included them, but at the very bottom, we have the drug-free workplace and drug-free schools.
Yep.
Which there's an issue there that came about because Ellen was our grants manager or coordinator, excuse me, went through an audit. And
There was an audit and said we were missing an updated version of that.
right, and so that one is that's the one that Kathleen was talking about earlier that we'd at least like to hand out and have you look at. It's pretty straightforward for tonight, or just to take with you and think about. The education of homeless children and unaccompanied youth, McKinney-Vento, that has been farmed out for what I call the subject matter experts to take our homeless coordinator, Stacy. Janine Richards is looking at it, and then John Fabrizio is looking at it. I've already met with them. I've got their input. I did the research. But that's one we're gonna want to hit pretty early in the year because our numbers on homeless students, as you know, about 100 of them.
Yeah,
And
Actually,
so,
up to 120.
wow.
120 now.
120, that was the
Last
latest
time I
number
checked in
John
with
shared
Stacy, it
with
was
me this week.
93.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So those three, as I said, bullying, which is the bullying, McKinney-Vento, and then drug-free workplace. Those are the ones that sort of are in the queue. As you might recall, last time we met, we started working on some of the policies dealing with instructional materials, the health education and exemption from instruction, if you recall, we did those. Jim, you had asked me on policy number 651, which was the citizens' request for reconsideration of instructional materials. That was the last one we were looking at that night.
Right.
You had asked me, because we were trying to
Who
define
constitutes
citizens,
the citizen?
and you said, can you do some more research and figure out what the other school districts are doing?
Right.
So I looked at Oyster River, I looked at Manchester, I looked at Hanover, there was one other.
We often look at Rochester. Did we look at Rochester?
I didn't look at Rochester, although
Okay.
I did look
Bedford?
at, there's one, Bedford, okay. And here's what's really interesting. Okay, so all of those school districts have the policy on parental objection to material. I'm saying that's not the exact one. Parental objections to
resource.
specific course materials, which we looked at, and that's number 650.
Right.
New Hampshire School Board Association and none of the other districts I looked at have 651, which is the citizens' request for reconsideration of instruction materials. So I went back and I looked a little bit at that, and I'm like, why do we have it? It's been in existence since 1983. It just hadn't been updated.
Speedy Gonzalez.
Hello.
Hey,
Sorry,
Dave.
guys.
No, that was pretty fast.
So, it's important, but I'm talking about the one policy from the last time we met on the 29th regarding citizen citizens' request for reconsideration of instructional material. Jim had asked me to go back and look at how the other school districts were doing it and how they were defining citizens. And I was just saying that though the other school districts I looked at, and there were 4 of them, all have parental objection to specific course materials. None of them, and includes the New Hampshire School Board Association, have a policy on citizens' objection. So ours is a little nuanced, but we've had it, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So,
Do we need it?
well, that's I will tell you that there was an issue, and not to get into it a lot, that that hypothetically there may have been a couple of books removed from the library. And the librarian said, we have a policy, and the response was, yes, but I'm not, this doesn't cover me. I'm not a parent, I am a X. And so we looked at it, and we do have a process in place.
But if they weren't a parent, why were they going into the school and removing something from the library?
Well, because it was something that was, controversial with regard to like Dr. Seuss, let's say. I hear you, Gina.
But
I'm just
why were
telling
they
you.
on
Why would
school
we allow
property
them
It was an administrator
Okay, well, that explains why they were on the property.
on property.
Yeah,
That wasn't the issue.
It wasn't Joe Schmo
No,
walking
no,
up
no.
to the school, walking in, going to the library and pulling books.
No. It was somebody
You
who.
can understand why I'm like, why is that person even?
Sure. No, person had a reason to be in the place they were, on the school property, but
Are you talking about this district?
yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So last time, you missed the beginning of this, but.
Right. No, I heard, yeah.
What was a citizen, what constitutes a citizen? Who has standing to
Right.
object?
And we had defined it in the instruction. So that one, I wanted to do my additional research. I didn't bring it back tonight because I thought tonight was more about the housekeeping.
Yep.
We can put it back in the queue. But I can tell you that the media specialists, our librarians, and some others are very anxious to they believe we need something that covers more than parental objection.
Well, there's been a lot written about it.
Yes, there
certainly,
has.
of citizens coming in and demanding that they refuse, take books off the shelves
Well,
that don't necessarily have kids in the school.
right.
I mean, read
But
about
the
it all the
question
time,
is,
right?
Do
I
they
mean,
have
am I-
standing to do that?
Do they have standing? Well,
Right.
and there were no new state laws that govern this in New Hampshire, because
Not yet.
not yet, right?
But I think
But do
across
they-
the country, you have, and that's what you're
Right.
reading, Dave. You're reading about people who object to certain
Right.
books. Could be To Kill a Mockingbird is
Correct.
banned and taken off shelves in
Right.
some school districts.
Color
or,
Purple, yeah, any of that.
A Separate Peace, or some of the adolescent materials that are out there, and they question it as a citizen. Perhaps their position on certain topics is why they want those books removed.
Well, and the question then becomes, do we, obviously, do we give them standing or not?
Currently, if someone had an objection, there would be a committee, a review committee created,
Correct.
instructional materials reconsideration committee that would involve the library media person, building administrator, assistant superintendent, ex officio. Person or persons involved in the original selection of the item, if they are
Still alive.
or here.
That's crazy.
Shakespeare, why do we have
Yeah,
Shakespeare?
person or persons signing or using the materials,
Jesus.
and then they would make a decision, and if the person didn't like it, then it would be appealed to the superintendent's review committee.
Actually, in the new instruction, did away with the committee and put it
Just
right
put
back
straight
in.
up to the superintendent the
And
first
she
time.
can say, I agree, she's not gonna review the whole thing, she's gonna look at the process and say, did the original committee do as they were chartered to do, and if so, I agree, I disagree.
Kind of like court appeals, where they look at, was there a procedural error? I'm not going to retry
That's
the
often my
fact,
role.
but.
Yeah,
That's it.
that sounds
And
something.
that's where it ends,
Right.
right? And if they don't, if they say, and I don't know if you changed this in the new policy, but if the superintendent's committee says, nope, this is fine, it can't be challenged for 3 years.
Correct, and that stayed the same.
That stayed.
That stayed the
So-
same, nor do you hold up the lessons that are going on based
No,
on the
they are.
material
Right.
while it's under review. It continues.
Okay.
So the real reason for the rewrite, and I've got to be honest, the process, it needed a rewrite.
Yeah.
Okay. Overall, there were a lot of small changes, but the big thing was how broad, as far as a standing issue, did we want to go?
I understand.
And that's how we were looking at to say, okay, is the citizen, okay, district employees, parents and guardians of district students, and then this was the one we kind of got into the last time, was residents of the town serviced by Concord, New Hampshire School
Right.
District, because of the taxes.
Or CRTC, would
Right.
this open it up to all of the schools anyone who's a citizen in the town of any of the schools that send people to us, is that open to them? And that's why I threw it back to you to see what.
Yeah, and I can tell you that nobody else has taken this on at this point.
Nobody else has that policy.
That's right.
Interesting.
But we've had it since 1983, when it was initially adopted.
Right. Well,
Are we in public hearing?
We
Yes,
are in
we are.
public
We're
Okay,
in
thank you,
public.
thank you.
Yes, we're in a
So-
public hearing.
So I guess my take would be to say, to stop at the residents of Concord and I guess Deerfield. Because CRTC, you can choose not to go to CRTC. But if you are a Concord resident, unless you're gonna homeschool or private school, you've got to send your kid to school.
It comes back, Gina, to something we discussed with our friends at Deerfield and their board and all, and it has to do with the school of record, right? We are the school of record for students in Concord that come to our schools. We're also the school of record for the Deerfield
But that's why I
students
said
that come
to
in.
include them
Yes,
as well.
right.
But I mean, if you.
That's why I said that's a but that's why I think it's a good standing.
I don't even know where all of our kids from CRTC come from.
There are 9 sending districts, I
But you
believe.
can choose whether or not you want to do CRTC.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Deerfield student and you're going to public school, you come here, am I correct?
For high school,
For high school.
yes.
So they would, they have no other choice, they come here, that's,
90%.
okay.
Not all students from Deerfield and at the high school level.
For
there are
public school.
10%
Yes.
that can have a choice.
Okay. But most of them don't.
Currently.
Most of them don't, so they come here.
Most come here.
So I would think that we have to include them, but I'm not sure we need to include all of the residents of all of the communities that choose to send their kids through CRTC, because that's not mandatory. It's not compulsory.
And furthermore, should someone from a sending school to CRTC who's in one of their specialized and, certainly very good courses, challenged an English book,
Well, but CRTC has English.
well, let me finish, in the middle school. So, that's, to me, that's just,
So do we want to
Too
look at
broad.
some, sorry, Dave. go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean,
Jump in.
that's using a specific criteria, which is compulsory education. Is that necessarily the criteria? Is that the only criteria, and that we should be?
Well, that's why I'm throwing this out. I mean,
I'm not sure.
What about-
because I haven't thought about it that
Something
much. But
like you have to have a legal nexus to the,
well, or do we want to give the general public standing? That's the question too. I mean,
Well-
right?
well,
Yeah.
that is,
That is the
once we
question. I
talk
think
about
we-
who's defined as a citizen and do we have a citizen, do we allow them the opportunity to do this? Yes, Dave, you open up that question that we should probably address, both here and in whatever
Well, that's
recommendation.
right. I mean, I think this is big because of its national, publicity. This sort of issue may be a board question, the larger board question to debate. I mean, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna once you let the citizens, that does open up a large group of population. If we have to do that, the standing piece is just very complicated, I think.
yeah, I'm just not sure I want.
Yeah, I think that's a great, I mean, nothing against what you're saying, I just don't know if we're gonna be, maybe Karen, you would know, I mean, are we suspect to questions if,
Well, I did talk
What do
to
you
Will
think?
Phillips a while ago when I started working on this and, defining, because if it's a school board in a general school board meeting on public speaking, somebody wants to stand up, they're allowed to stand up. okay? Nobody has really defined this yet. And so he's kind of said, well, let me know how it turns out.
Yeah.
Well,
Kind of
that's a
interesting
little,
idea.
it's
But
a little onerous on our part.
it is onerous, but here's the issue. Maybe we can put in a provision that says, or on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, I
somebody-
don't think you want to get into that squishy mire of discretion.
Well,
Because then you're going to get into abuse of discretion when we tell Petunia Clark from East Lubbock, Texas, that she doesn't have standing.
But
so what about I'm sorry, Jim, a student who is, presently attending CRTC or the high, within the district and their parents, so that we include CRTC, we include the high school, parents, guardians of those students. I don't know. That's whatever you all feel comfortable with.
My experience, limited as it is here, you have allowed people from outside of this community to speak at your meetings.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
so,
we remember who that is.
Yeah.
yes, we do.
Because they had a student, sorry to interrupt, no.
They
Because they
were
had a
Not-
student at CRTC.
They did not have.
No,
a
they
student
didn't. They had a
at CRTC.
Or the districts,
At one of
They're-
the districts,
they were
exactly
in a
the
school
situation we're
district
discussing.
that was a sending school
correct,
district.
right,
so-
that's right.
So it's only happened once that you're
For
aware.
speaking.
do you realize what they're doing?
Okay.
I'm just going to say my personal view on this one, and then one of the things I wrote in there is that, I'm all for allowing, parents and for our citizens, I'm for local control and local input into our school district. I think it's important. This is our community, whether you have students in here or not. But I don't want this to be a forum where someone who isn't local, who isn't here in Concord or sends their, kids to Concord can,
Dictate our,
dictate something that hurts or affects our students. And that's where my personal view on this is. And then that's how we word that. I don't know. I'm not in that's not my forte, but I do want, I'm concerned about that.
Right, and I totally agree with you. Somebody who's got a dog in the fight. And maybe that's a terrible analogy to use because dog fighting's illegal, but somebody who's got, someone who's got
Skin in the
something
game
to
is the
answer.
term
It's
now.
standing.
Yeah.
Something that's standing.
right,
Someone
someone
who
that
has
has
Yeah,
standing.
Yes.
we've got to further define standing.
Right.
So
Yes.
we have to have some sort of, I hear what you're saying, I understand the concept, so if you'll allow me, I'll go back and continue to try and come in with a better,
Better you to define standing than me.
well,
no, I think-
and Kathleen, and I'll call Will and see where we are.
Yeah, and
If
I'd
we
like
can,
to-
we
But-
can.
I'd also like some input from Dean and get a little feedback from him and see what his perspective, perhaps in other districts, he might have had some experience with this.
But when we think about it, just because we're giving them standing doesn't mean we're agreeing with them or
No,
or
it just
allowing
means
them
they
to.
have,
I'm not trying to be critical of what they may offer, great advice, but it doesn't necessarily give them permission to tell us what to do, I guess is what you would
well,
say.
they can certainly challenge,
They
I
can
mean, I think they
challenge
could challenge
and
any
appeal.
book.
That's right.
But I just, again, I don't think the people from East Lubbock, Texas
No, I
should be
agree.
coming here to tell us
Right,
what
right.
books we have in our library.
And that's where standing can, I agree.
Thank you,
Okay.
Karen.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. Lucky you.
discussion.
Always trying to put you all on the books, in the news, so. anyway,
So
okay.
I think it kind of gives you a general idea
Right.
of where we're at, what policies we want to review, and make sure that we are attentive to the new updates from the legislative. But I think just so you know, and we appreciate your advice to make sure we're bringing in policies that we can manage in a way that the board, because they all go to the board and 9 members have to hear it. So
Right.
we'll be sensitive to that. But we kind of want to give you an idea where we were at and what's next.
Yep.
So,
Jim.
thank you. I just want to stay at this point. I just want to thank Karen and
Yes.
you for this. We have kept not only up with but ahead of the legal requirements that have been passed and have been sent out by the legislature and the state, and we are literally, in my opinion, ahead of the game, and I think that's great. And I just want to thank you for that because we really have worked hard. You've worked hard on it, and I don't know if we've ever been that far caught up, much less a little bit ahead in my time here in the board. It's a very challenging task, so thank you very much.
Thank
The
you.
legislature
And the legislature
has
has
been
been
very
very
busy.
active, yes.
Yeah.
With respect to schools.
So,
So Dave, this is what we've done in the last year.
I know, I've been here.
yeah.
I know. It's been fascinating, actually.
Dave's sitting there saying, "I know." Very much. I know.
I don't mean that in a, in really,
I was here.
yeah, I'm sorry if that came off the wrong way. I do find all of this, you know, really interesting stuff and exciting to discuss, honestly.
Just to follow up too, we'll take a lot of the new policies this year. We'll be working with, we have our administrative council meeting and a retreat. So on the agenda will be policy updates. So the critical policies need
Great.
to be, make sure we get them out. And of course, they'll be part of the new teacher onboarding when we have all of our new teachers in. So, you know, these policies don't die here or in a book or on
Right.
online. Of course, they go online. But we will make sure that they are distributed to the appropriate people, so, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? The financial disclosure resolution is one of the ones that are upcoming topics. That's for our campaign and the board. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think that's great.
So when Kathleen and I spoke earlier about what we were doing at this meeting, we thought we'd look at what we've done and where we still need to go. So,
Great.
and really, I guess we should turn to the policy 413 and then get through that and then call it a brief
Either-
discussion about the upcoming topics and call it a night?
Yeah, do you all feel good about, you know, we had those two meetings, we had the June 22nd and then we had the June 29th meetings. And I know that on the June 22nd meeting, we had 8 policies. I think that all got pushed for the first read in July, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in August, you know, they're all up for a second read.
Correct.
right? Okay, all right. Then on June 29th,
I'm not
and
sure that's correct.
do you want me
Hold
to
on.
tell you which ones I have them as?
I think the one that didn't,
It initially was the high school graduation competencies, because I had to go back and work on some of the wording, mastery, and some of that.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
I brought that back on the 29th.
right, but I think the only thing that didn't go forward for the reading was the citizens' request for the.
Right. We
Correct.
sent that back. We
sent that
didn't
back.
do a
So
first
we
reading on that
sent
at
it
all.
8. We now have 7, I think.
Okay, got it. But 651 would have been one of the ones we looked at on the 29th. So is
But
everybody?
we sent it back. We did not send it forward.
No, she's saying the 29th, so it was already not being,
It hadn't even gone forward. So on the
Right, okay.
22nd, though, you had 8 policies we looked at.
That's right.
7 of them went forward
Right.
for a
Right.
first read. The 8th one, I went back and worked on a little bit more, and on the 29th, you all said, send that one forward because of the mastery. That was the high
Right,
school
yep.
Right, right.
competencies.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so we did that. So currently, I have 8. I show 11 policies then that are potentially up for
Second reading,
a second reading.
which are starting on the master list, starting at 672.
No, they can't be 11, no,
No.
that's not right. There could not be 11 policies
No.
for second read. The second read are only the 8 policies that we reviewed at the last
Right,
board
and then
meeting.
the 3 ones, we said we'd put forward, not,
But
Okay.
I'm suggesting that we
but
hold
not for
back on
first-
those,
Right,
that we do those in September.
Right.
but I think that's what we decided. We
Yeah.
approved to push it forward, but not until September
Yeah.
For the first read.
for the first read.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
perfect.
because, again,
September.
It's enough.
as
So,
it is, we're going to have 8
Yes.
yes.
policies.
I mean,
for
but at least
second
we've,
read.
at least everyone's had a chance to see them, talk about them a little bit, so.
Right, but I
and
wanted
we
to
haven't
s-
received any calls from any board members.
No, so
asking
that
me-
starts at 672, I think, on our list here.
Yeah.
I didn't bring my other list. Should've
No.
brought the book
No,
down.
I can tell you what, you want me to, I guess I should go through them in numerical order to make it easier. One would be home education, which is 620,
Okay,
okay? Promotion and retention of students, which was 670, okay? And I took a note there that I'll be back on the piece I was asked to come up with, we're gonna come up with what are we looking at? What's our
guidance.
process?
The guidance.
The guidance.
The guidance.
We have to do that.
Yep.
Have that
671,
on
which
my
is
list.
high school graduation
Right.
requirements.
Yep.
674, alternative credit options. 675, high school graduation competencies. 676, alternative learning plans. 677, distance education. And then 678, assessment of educational programs.
That's correct.
And that's remember our hub with all
Yep.
the spokes? That's this one.
Okay, and what did we already approve 672? Or 621? 621.
621 is
Extended learning opportunities.
yes, we did. That
Already
one-
approved.
That was already approved.
Okay.
One of the things we want to be careful of is appearing that, I mean, if there's a ton of policies that people have to vote on, I mean, it seems disingenuous that everyone can read all those, and I don't want it to look like we haven't really worked and read these things and
Right.
discussed them. 8 in a meeting is, to me, just saying, doesn't lend itself well to a lot of lengthy discussion, or the meeting's going to go till 11 o'clock at night again.
David, you guys have committees, and the
Right.
purpose of the committees in an organization like Concord is to really do the work. The
Right.
hard work in the committee is to refine the policies to meet the needs of the district.
That's a good point.
When
Thank
you
you.
bring them back to your full board, yes, there's going to be questions, and we've had them.
Right.
But not digging deep into it. You've already done
Right.
that.
Okay.
And so I think
a really
that
good point. I just
think
want the public-
the rest of your colleagues on the board have to know that you did the due diligence to feel that you could bring it forward with a recommendation.
That
And
answers my question.
prevent them from asking questions, David, but
No, you're right, but I was thinking more of the perception, not the
Right.
reality. And I think it's something that would mention as we push these forward, that these have been gone over in detail by this committee. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but
And they've been read
right.
with the board,
Right.
and the board has had opportunity in the last month to
Right.
object or modify or
Reach
amend
out to me
any
with
of them.
edits or,
So at this point, hopefully the superintendent's
Maybe I'm
right,
taking
of
the
course,
lead
but
from
I
you,
feel-
Jim.
But I feel your concerns.
Well, that's good. But thank you, Kathleen. You're absolutely right.
otherwise, for me, there's no
Right.
purpose for a committee. I
Right.
mean, you
Right.
got, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
You come here and you spend an hour and a half and you put together, sometimes more on policy. I mean,
Right.
look how long you were on the transgender policy. I mean, we had weeks and weeks.
We did
right?
some great work. Definitely. Well, thanks. You answered that question.
So, okay.
So, Madam Chair, are you good with that?
yes.
Okay.
Should we move to the policy that we're
Can we-
looking at tonight?
Can we look at the
Sure.
413?
413, does everybody have a copy? It's
They should have a
drug-free
copy.
workplace and drug-free schools.
Yep, have we kept a copy from you, Dave?
I only have 2
Oh,
pages.
here
Okay,
you go.
you
sorry.
should have
It's right
3.
here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Do you need this? Do you need
I
one?
better take the most current. So this policy is being revised. It is it is priority required by law. And so when I went through this, I took a look at it to see what the big differences were. Let me see. This came about, the reason we're looking at this now, just so, David, I don't think you were here when we were talking about this, was that our grants coordinator recently went through an audit with DOE. And one of the things that the auditor said was, hey, there's been a change to some of the language in this drug-free workplace and drug-free schools, and we'd like you to make sure that your policy is up to date. So we were hoping, absolutely, we were going to, of course, get to it, but we'll get to it sooner so that when we start school in the fall, Ellen can go back to the auditor and say, it's been reviewed, it's now current. And basically, the one specific thing they were interested in is that if an employee or a contractor is convicted of a drug offense or an alcohol offense and they're working on a grant, they are assigned to a grant, that they want to be notified. So that was, it was sort of a, not a possessive, but something specific to the grant program. So, but I'm happy to walk through this and.
So is that 4B?
4D. Let's see. let's see, no, there's even, it's more, it's, if you keep going back, I want to say that it is, let me find it. It's under B in the second paragraph.
Right, federal contractor grant.
Yeah. The superintendent will notify the appropriate state or federal agency from which the district receives contract or grant money of
Got
a
it.
staff or contractor conviction. Now, again, it's there were two things. I want to just bring your attention, or I can go right through it, or let you just read it. And that is, we're talking about drug-free workplace and drug-free schools. So, first of all, we define what is workplace, and that's defined in here to include buses, and then it talks about workplace, the site for the performance of work in any district building, grounds owned or operated by the district, any school-owned vehicle, so there's your buses, any other school-approved vehicle used to transport students to and from school, off-school property during any school-sponsored or school-approved activity, event, or function. So again, such as a field trip, athletic event, anything that the school is sponsoring, okay? So it clearly defines what is the workplace. And then secondly, it's very clear in here now that it defines what a controlled substance is, and it even says that even if you have a marijuana card, it's still a prohibition, so under the current law. And then finally, you need, in order for this really to kick in and for disciplinary action to occur against an employee or a contractor, the person has to be convicted of the offense, not just charged with or pending or under investigation. It has to be an actual conviction. So, and then as I said, the big thing with regard to the audit was making sure that we do proper notifications, that is, the superintendent does, if the wrongdoing is done by either a contractor or an employee working on a federal or state grant.
So it becomes public too.
Okay, and this does include, say, subcontractors, let's say.
Contractors, period. And we played with that language a little bit. I've got to be honest. Contractors, we said staff members and contractors. So whether you're a contractor or a subcontractor. It would,
Okay, I just,
and this will be one of those policies that we hand out
Yeah, staff.
upon onboarding. And then there's the requirement, of course, to make sure we train to this, that we provide copies of the policy for our folks, and that it's placed on the bulletin board where other employee notices are, so they know what it is.
So let me ask a question.
Sure.
And I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. And first of all, let me preface this by, I would hope that anyone, as a contractor or employee of school who has a substance abuse problem would come to us for assistance, which we would of course provide.
And we have an employees assistance program, as you know.
Exactly, and I would love to see everything resolved there before it ever goes to anywhere else. And however we can do that or support that, I'm all for. So if someone is caught and charged with a violation of this policy and if they enter a plea bargain of something, then we wouldn't be able to have them take a substance abuse program, or no, I'm not talking about disciplinary action. I'm talking about the superintendent having the person to successfully complete an appropriate drug or alcohol abuse program.
I would
So
say
we
as
would not
long,
be able to do
and
that.
Gina, jump in. I would say that as long as it's not like a deferral which says, if you plea bargain, it's still a conviction with the following limitations per se. But if it's a deferment which says, as long as you don't do anything for the next 6 months and then
right,
it
so
goes
sometimes
away.
it's the findings are placed on hold.
Correct.
I would think that if the findings are placed on hold, then that is not a violation of this, because they technically haven't been convicted
Correctly.
at that point.
But she can still, as a superintendent, say, I want you to go through this rehab,
can.
seek help through the employee assistance program.
That's what I want to be able to make sure we get the help and have people seek help. when we
Absolutely.
identify a situation where they need help.
So-
So that's my concern mostly.
Because it does say alternatively, under B, a staff member who violates may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Then alternatively, the superintendent may require a staff member to successfully complete an appropriate drug alcohol abuse employee assistance rehab.
Okay.
But they're
So-
technically not in violation if it's a finding placed on hold.
Correct.
But
Right.
I personally, just personally, for what it's worth, when we post this, wherever we post it, I'd love to see it being posted next to an EAP poster.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
Like,
I want people to know it's available.
Here's the bad
there.
news, and oh, by the way, here's your ticket out of the corner. You know, we don't want to place you in a corner. This is a corner, but here's the roadmap to get yourself out of the corner before something bad happens and your employment is at risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's employee best practices these days, and it should be. You know, it has stigmas, but, and rightfully so, but, yeah, we should help people. We're in the business of helping people,
We're in
and
that business.
if it,
Sorry?
I said, we're in that business.
We
that's
are?
right, you know.
Yeah, as long as they refer, I can tell you when I was on active duty, that this was always a tricky one, is if you refer before the drug test comes, in other words, you get in there and you say, I may have a drug or alcohol issue, I need to self-refer.
Right.
As long as that happens prior to the positive drug urinalysis test coming back. But you have to be really, really, clear. So you're right, employee assistance program, we're never gonna know about
That's
it
right.
because that's confidential. But if somebody gets nabbed driving drunk on school property,
Right, but that's why I want, here's what's gonna back you into a corner, but here's your roadmap out of that corner
Sure.
before it gets there.
Yep.
No, I agree. Thank you. I think Dave put it best.
Yep.
This is what we're about. This is.
Yep.
And it's best practices right now, right?
Yeah.
And
What do
usually, I would say usually, if they have that much of a problem with this sort of support, then they probably shouldn't be working in a district, They need more help,
There's a lot.
more long-term treatment
Yeah.
or something of that nature, I would think. So, this is good. Thank you.
So,
What are you looking?
Karen, are you looking for
To
us to make a
us, yeah.
recommendation of this for first reading?
In September?
August,
We already have,
September.
we already have 3 on the books. I don't think we want to do any first readings in August, because we've got the 8 second
Oh,
readings.
I know.
But we've already got-
That's why Dave's laughing. I know. That's why he's
I just,
laughing.
it's out there. I just wanted you to see it. We've worked
Right.
on it. I can always bring it back a little later and say, we talked about it. Or what do you think, Kathleen? How?
I think we can schedule it. Let's look at September. Let's look at what we have.
Okay.
Once we have the homeless policy
McKinney-Vento.
and McKinney-Vento,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
are pretty standard. They've been around. It's not like these are brand new
Right, right.
policies.
That's a
Right,
good
right.
point.
Even this one, there's
Yeah.
minor changes in
Right.
it. It's
Yeah.
not huge. So it's not like we're really absorbing a lot. I can handle 4.
Okay.
So in that case, I would like to make a motion that the committee recommend this or the committee recommend bringing this to the full board during the September meeting for a first reading.
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So 3-0, we will move forward with the first reading in September.
So Karen, at this point, in addition to all, as I've always done, thanking you, would you, next time you're talking with the New Hampshire School Board Association and
Will.
those folks who have assisted you in this, please thank them from
I
us.
will. They're a really
Really
great
good.
group.
They save us a lot of work, actually, quite frankly. So
And
that's
money.
good. And
Yeah.
money, quite a bit of money, yes.
Well, I do think
Always good.
the dues that we pay are worth the value that we receive in return.
Agreed.
Manyfold over. I think the value is manyfold the dues that we would charge, the modest dues, so that's good.
Okay, so upcoming topics. Kathleen, are there,
Well, I think you need to have a discussion. I think the one financial disclosure resolution, you need to have that here.
Yeah.
That's been the recommendation that it start here. So I'd like to look at that one. And the one that I really want you to address is the bullying one. And I don't know whether we want to separate out those two, but these are a list of some of the ones, and please add the homeless policy to it. We may be able to bring that one in September, but other than that, I want to go back now that I have the updates from School Board Association, and Karen and I will sit down. You know, Karen and I meet weekly on Wednesdays. Is it Wednesday? On Wednesdays, so we tackle these every week.
Yeah.
So give us some time to do that and look at
Oh,
the
yeah,
new
no, I
updates.
just sort of trying to figure out
Yeah.
where we've been and where we're going. and
I
try and-
appreciate
It's good. Thank you.
Because it does get a little
Level out
overwhelming.
the-
Yeah, it gets overwhelming because you really want to have these and you want to be up to date.
But, so
So,
board, do we want to have a discussion about the financial resolution thing and then a brief discussion to try and have this be a brief meeting?
So, what are we basing this? Are we gonna start as a basis the Concord City Council one, the one that's used for the state representatives? Does anybody else have one in another school district? What should we have our standing point or our starting point be?
Well, how, before we get there, do we want to move forward and, I mean, do we as a committee want to move forward on this issue? Do we want to?
No, I got it. Let's see. Do
I
we
mean,
want to,
before we
do we
get
want to
to-
tackle
before we
this?
get to the
Do we want to
details.
tackle this at all is your question?
Is sort of my first question.
I say yes, and that's,
I say yes.
Okay,
Dave?
that's fine, yeah.
Okay. So I thought we should start at, do we want to,
Oh, that's a
do we
good
want to
point,
do
yeah.
this?
Yeah, but I also don't think it's gonna be that controversial for us, is it?
Well, I think the members of the board are not opposed to this at
That's
all.
what I mean.
the most difficult part, you're correct, Dave, in my opinion.
Right.
The most difficult part of this is finding out who has to approve what we say so it to become requirement or law. or-
Well,
Well, it's a
Financial.
financial, I mean, so this if you're running for election, right?
Right. As I understand it, if the board is going to make a policy that affects the board, then by definition it has to be a resolution. It can't just be a policy.
Okay.
But, you know, the question, as I see it, having gone to a couple of the charter commissions, and really read the AG's letter saying you can't do this pretty carefully, there is a question about whether we have the authority to tell candidates for the board what they are going to do. And for me, at least, I think that's kind of a red herring. Because if we all agree that we're going to comply, and we don't have the authority to make somebody else comply, well, public perception sometimes comes around and does the job for you, if that makes any sense. You know, if you have candidates who say, I'm not going to do it,
Well, they have a good role model for it.
they do, but, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not going there.
I don't
You know,
want,
if everyone who's running does it except two people, then that's
Right.
going to end up being a very visible
right.
issue that is resolvable by the candidates, but, you know, people will draw the conclusions that they wanted to draw. So my thought is, I think we should move forward with this, even though we may or may not have the authority to enforce it against not yet board members. And let the dice fall where they may on public perception.
may I offer
Yeah.
a thought? You know, the challenge is that when you read the information from the AG's office, the language in the law applies to school districts that aren't autonomous like you are, and you're one of a kind. And so in trying to determine the charter and the language of the charter, they were looking at all the laws on the books that had no relationship. Even Nashua or Manchester or Rochester, any of your cities, it's different.
Right, and I don't necessarily agree with the Attorney General's analysis, but I'm not the Attorney General, so I don't get to make that decision.
So I think that's why I felt like you had the opportunity to develop a resolution.
I think so too. Yeah.
Okay.
Gina's point's well taken.
Yep.
I think so. However, the one thing I'm saying is that if I am Jane Smith, right? I'm running against board member AB, whatever. The board member is required by our thing to be able to do this. And you point out the fact that it'll be clearly obvious that, but this candidate just says, no, I pay for everything myself. Right? There is no consequence to that, of lying. There is no
Correct.
enforcement of lying, and there's no way to take a look at it and check it. So in effect, just be aware that that can and very possibly may happen. But
Well, and then the public, the voters, will draw whatever conclusion they feel is appropriate from that information.
from the fact they said, no, I was never funded by anybody other than myself.
Well, and
And that I refuse to file the paperwork.
Well,
for Senate.
Well,
And
I don't want to file.
this may be a sidebar, but we
There
don't want to
is-
discourage people from running either,
No, I don't.
so,
I think once again,
I don't think it
we're all,
would be, but-
we're all arguing about transparency.
Right.
And the thing that we've said before is
Right.
that, we want the local people to be informed and understand exactly where we're coming from and what they're voting for.
Right.
And they can vote however they wish. Okay, I'm okay with that. I
So-
think we should move forward with it.
I haven't seen either the city or the state
haven't
rep forms. I mean, do they say more than, this is where, these are the sources of my funding and this is what I spent?
well, I ran, basically, that's what you do.
Okay,
The sources of your funding, I ran for city council, so you have a financial disclosure form, basically.
Right.
This is what I spent, I paid for signs, da-da-da-da-da, and this is, I was typically self-funded, I think somebody gave me $10 or something, and I have to disclose who did.
right, but I
And that was
remember, I remember way back when you had to put fiscal agent on your sign and you had
Yeah,
to do
right.
reporting to the
Yeah, you
Secretary
did.
of
Thank you.
State and you,
So let's,
I do remember putting fiscal agent on signs in another community when I ran, but
let's just,
I don't think,
let's not try to
no,
remember
no,
and speculate.
I'm trying not
Let's get
to
the,
cause those
can we get the
difficulties.
information?
We'll get,
for the
let's
next mo-
give us for the
meeting.
next meeting, we'll gather any
Yeah,
kinds of
right.
information we have from other districts that may have this. Cities, mostly cities, so we'll grab
What does the
that.
city council have to fill out?
Yeah, I don't, yeah.
Same thing.
We'll
None of
get
us
that. We'll
really
get
know
that.
what we're.
We'll get that.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Okay,
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
So the next question I ask is, you had identified the bullying policy and the homeless student policy as important.
Yes.
When, do you have a timeline on those, just for our information? or-
McKinney-Vento, which is the homeless, and then the drug-free, those are the two. Well, as I said, bullying's important too, but we have something in place. I would put the other two in front of them. So if we can get to those, early in the school year, September, October, I think that would be great.
Okay,
And as Kathleen said, we have McKinney-Vento, it's just been updated, and then, as I said, we now have a homeless coordinator. I think, is she full-time now?
Well, we got a grant that's going to allow her to be full-time. With
So-
120 students, we really felt like we had to.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And so what we did is we took what was updated, and then I farmed it out to the subject matter experts so that they can tell me this is exactly what we are doing or what we're not doing. So we should have it wrapped up pretty soon.
okay. Can I ask a question on, the one policy is a, discussion of a new policy on political expression for the high school, which could be a topic this fall, potentially, I don't know. Are you looking to do something quickly on that, or is that a political expression of staff or students? Or
Yeah, I
whatever?
think a lot of that came out of some of the things that were at the high school with the flag, the
Ball caps.
the ball caps that had 1776, the wearing, the Black Lives Matter, all of that, and what does that mean in terms of a school? I mean, they certainly have the right to wear what they have. I mean, we have no right to remove a cap because it had 1776 on it, even though there's a meaning to it that some people took offense to. So the high school really grappled with that last year and really didn't arrive at any conclusions, and there isn't any policy in place around
No.
it because there is freedom of speech and freedom to, you could
mean,
Is
my-
it unlimited freedom? Hate speech is okay, everything else too?
No, that isn't.
No.
No,
See, so let's-
but you have
let's
to
see.
have that. You have to have that significant disturbance to the educational process, if you will. It's like that tinker. It's the tinker case.
Yeah.
So hate speech. If the kids are starting or the staff are marching out of the school in protest, then we might have an opportunity to say, wait a minute, we need to look at this more
Because
closely.
well, I want to know, I guess I'm asking because I kind of think that, I know that in the past, not here, thank goodness.
Yep.
But gang,
Yep.
colors,
Paraphernalia.
paraphernalia was limited in
Right.
some schools. And I'm just curious as to, do we know where that line is, or what's the defining factor? Is it disruption of the academic process? Is it, I guess I'm asking you to talk about the policy before you even have the policy, so it might not be a fair question.
Well, I certainly look into it. I mean, it's a huge concept.
But
It's-
what's disruption for you may not
No, I
be for
know,
me,
that's-
and that's the
That's
problem
why
with it.
I think it's a really hard, I'm not saying anything, I think it's a hard policy, so.
We've
yeah.
had that on the block. We've had that on here for a while because we've struggled with it.
Right.
It's no different, by the way, than the dress code policy.
No, I know.
And
Good
I have a
luck.
right
And
to
good
be.
luck.
And, yeah, when it comes down to.
Well, can you
very
advertise
principles.
drugs and alcohol, for example?
Right.
Can you?
No.
Right. So that's
But-
saying, that's some restriction, right?
But I mean,
And
I have
that's
a,
part of the student handbook.
Right.
But do we have a right to say someone can't come in with a
But like.
T-shirt with a leaf on it?
right.
Or, holy cow, the other day I was wearing a shirt that had a particular whiskey brand on it. That, would I be not allowed in the school with that? I don't think I would ever wear that to the school, just because I'm on the school board. But, if some student who happens to be retro and likes Van Halen, wearing a Jack Daniels T-shirt that's from a concert of theirs at some point, would we say, no, you gotta take that off?
We looked at this this fall, and it was the my free speech tinker versus. There's a famous case out there that
Yeah.
says that you don't give up your First Amendment freedom
Right.
of speech at the schoolhouse door. And the facts in that case, please don't quote me, but I believe there was a student who came in with an armband protesting Vietnam, and the court came down and said no, she is allowed to do that because her rights do not stop when she enters the schoolhouse door. So when I was talking to Dean about it, because we had a couple of scenarios this fall, and Kathleen asked me to look at it. We felt at that point there was one district was having problems with a T-shirt. They made a student take it off.
Right, they
We-
wore a Trump T-shirt, and because it caused, some people didn't care for that, and other people thought it was all right.
Right.
Principal turns around and says you have to remove that shirt because it's creating a disruptive atmosphere in the school, and they lost.
Right.
They were not
Right,
allowed
right,
to.
So
right.
the
Well,
wasn't
analogy-
there a Supreme Court case that happened that we were hoping would provide better?
That was
Better-
cyberbullying.
That was cyber.
And they never defined
And they never
significant
did.
disruption. Disruption
Yeah,
was like,
right.
hey, thanks a lot for
So we
that.
got nowhere with
So
that.
Yeah,
We
that
can
was the
help on that.
cheerleader. That was the cheerleader in Pennsylvania who
Right.
did this.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, so when Dean and I last talked about it,
You're on TV.
You're on
nicely.
we were
Rather you than me.
we were waiting. Oh, am I on camera?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
you are.
sorry. We were waiting for, and you don't want to advertise it, but we were looking to try, if we got to that point, to define the significant disruption.
Right.
We didn't have it. We had 2 complaints, and we dealt with it, and it went away. But if
Right.
you have students or staff marching out of school in protest of something, then we might have to then say, okay,
It interferes with the educational process.
correct.
And that's the
That's where you
criteria.
draw the line.
That's
Right.
where you draw the
Right.
line.
That's the legal.
I mean, that's,
I'm just being the bad guy. So how many students have to march out for?
well, I don't think you can define.
And do they do it during-
I think reasonableness, we can come up with 1,000 different exceptions or scenarios.
Well, I hope we don't have to face this
Yeah.
and make any of those decisions.
Well,
But
I mean-
we have a very smooth school here, and people
you know-
respect everyone's right to have their own opinion.
Yeah.
And, but each other as well.
1,400 students and 600 from the Career Technical Center on any given day. we do okay.
Yeah,
The
right.
kids are,
Yes.
our students are really pretty good.
They
I
are
mean,
pretty good.
sure, we have some people who test the system, but they test the system in a way that doesn't create that
Good.
environment. So
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
we shouldn't have a
Okay.
policy, but
Right.
And
Yeah.
even last year, remember the whole senior thing about senior privileges and being able to leave campus? And the students staged a walkout. I think there were 4 of them, and they did it in between classes, and it was very orderly, and they held up their signs, and off they went. And it was very transparent. And so it was a win-win.
I think it also depends on how it's responded to.
Right.
For example, when I was in high school, there was a large subgroup of kids that started wearing Nazi armbands in what was predominantly a Jewish neighborhood. And not surprisingly, that got a reaction. But what the school did instead was they called an assembly and brought in some Holocaust survivors to talk about why they have the numbers on their forearms and what they experienced and what we went through. And within about 2 weeks, that group kind of just disappeared into the woodwork. You know,
Education, you know?
Reasonableness prevails most of the time.
Yeah.
Good.
oh, I'm not sure that's true anymore, Dave.
No, but when you have to make a
There's a
decision,
timeline.
you know, so you can't. These policies are intentionally somewhat vague,
Yes,
so
they
that you can interpret them given the circumstances.
Yes,
These are kids.
absolutely.
These are adolescents. Kathleen said they're going to test the system. Sometimes attention, deviance gets attention. So sometimes it's better to lowball these things, and if it's going to be disruptive to the education process. So, I mean, we have good administrators. We have good decision makers. They'll be fine.
They'll do a good job, yes.
Yes, and that is their job.
Right.
yes.
There you go.
And
Anything else?
No, the next 2 policies that we haven't even touched, we haven't even looked at, superintendent's evaluation and goal setting, is there some new adjustments to it? I haven't even looked at it.
I haven't either.
All right,
I
so we'll
wasn't
look
sure,
at
but I'll
that,
look that one. Okay.
and then, but we'll do that work with us, and then agenda preparation.
But-
I just want to look at it and see what it is.
I
see
think
what it
the
looks like.
superintendent evaluation, I don't think we have a policy. I think that was the point.
No, it says New
It
Hampshire.
says recommended, but.
Well, we
Policy
have
is
one.
referenced
I mean,
in
there
the
is one. There is, I mean, they're out there. I mean.
No, I mean, I don't think the Concord
There isn't
School
one
District
here?
has a
Okay.
policy. I don't think we do.
Look, I will go look.
So we can take a look at this. It's
I mean,
not-
you do have that
Yeah, it's a
obligation.
new policy. We don't have that. We do it, but we don't have a policy
Right.
on it right now, so.
But, okay.
We can look at
We'll
that.
we'll
You have a
look at
little
that.
time on that one, because
Yeah.
whatever policy it is
Not in effect until next
this
year.
time, yeah. There's some time
This
on it.
time next year, so,
And then
Okay.
agenda prep and dissemination, it's just, I want to review that, make sure with, any changes in that.
No, I think that's good to review,
I know the one change that we had for agenda was making sure that people had public opportunity to speak publicly, public comment, and you've done that forever. The most recent one is, I just got a poll question on students on the board, students sitting, being seated on the board, and I just responded this morning back to New Hampshire School Association that we had 2. So that was part of a legislative
Yes.
action
Recommendation.
this
but we
year.
are, but for,
But we're all
ahead
set.
of it, so.
Both of those that came through this year, we were already doing, so. try
I
to
even
keep
think
up
on you.
that.
You took it one step forward more this year, as I recall, in that on the back of the agendas, weren't you posting the rules for
I
public
love
comment?
that. I really
think that
like
was
that.
really
People
great.
can see
That came out of the New Hampshire School Board Association.
Yeah, it's a good
We'll
best
continue to do
practice.
that,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
And
Yeah, and-
make sure that we have non-public. I always feel badly when we,
Well, I wanted to see
yeah.
whether we can get a piece of poster board. that
Yeah.
has
We'll get
91.8
something on
grades.
that.
Oh, have it in your, at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
have it in your packet every month. You'll have I found a
Yeah.
really good tool, so I'll do it.
I think, yeah, and I think having it on the back has been really great, and our public has been outstanding in their participation with the school board this year. And I just want to recognize that the public has been, we've appreciated their input and they've been outstanding.
Great.
Okay, are there any other issues before this committee this evening?
move adjourn.
Okay, it's 6:30, close enough to 6:38.
Okay. And I will second.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We
Yes.
stand adjourned.